Story 1. By man in the driveway. Suburbs are supposed to be safe. It's quiet neighborhoods, family homes, and empty streets at night. But sometimes, the scariest things happen in big cities. They happen right outside your own front door. Here are 5 terrifying true horror stories from quiet suburbs. I grew up in a very quiet suburb, the kind where people left their doors unlocked and everyone knew their neighbors. One night, when I was about 16, I stayed up late watching TV while my parents were asleep. Around midnight, I decided to head upstairs, but before turning off the lights, I glanced out the living room window that overlooked our driveway. That's when I noticed something strange. A man was standing at the very end of our driveway, just outside the circle of light from the street lamp. He wasn't moving, just staring up at the house. I grew up in a quiet suburb where nothing ever seemed to happen. The kind of neighborhood where people left their doors unlocked and waved to each other in the morning. As a teenager, I felt safe there, maybe too safe. One night, when I was about 16, I stayed up late watching TV. My parents were asleep upstairs, and the house was silent except for the soft hum of the screen. I remembered the way the shadows from the television flickered across the walls. Around midnight, I finally decided to go to bed. I reached for the remote, ready to turn everything off. But before I did, my eyes wandered toward the living room window that overlooked our driveway. That was when I saw him. A man was standing at the very end of the driveway. He was just outside the circle of light cast by the street lamp. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I knew instantly that he was staring at the house. At first, I thought maybe it was a neighbor, someone walking home late, but something about the way he stood there made my stomach twist. He wasn't moving. He wasn't fidgeting. He was perfectly still, like he was waiting. Was he really watching me? Or was it just my imagination? I pressed closer to the glass, squinting through the dim light. His outline was tall, broad-shouldered, with a hood pulled over his head. The longer I looked, the more certain I became that his eyes were locked on me. My chest grew tight. I kept glancing back at the staircase, wishing I had the courage to call for my dad. But what if I was wrong? What if it was nothing? A thought ran through my head over and over, even as my heart pounded harder. Seconds felt like minutes. The man finally shifted. It's not much, just a small tilt of his head upward, like he knew I was standing in the window. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Oh, why was he there? And what would he do if I stepped away from the glass? At first, I thought it was maybe a neighbor or someone drunk walking home. But as I stood there watching, he slowly stepped closer. His face was shadowed, but I could see he was tall, wearing a hoodie pulled tight. I froze. My heart was pounding. The man walked halfway up the driveway, then stopped again, just standing there, watching. I whispered for my dad, but he was a deep sleeper. I didn't want to yell, because something in me felt like if I drew attention, it would get worse. I grew up in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where neighbors waved at each other, and doors were often left unlocked. Nights were calm, almost too calm, with only the soft hum of distant traffic breaking the silence. I always thought it was the safest place in the world until that night. Shadows stretched across my room as the moonlight seeped through the blinds, creating patterns that seemed to twist on the walls. The house was empty except for me, and the faint ticking of the clock felt unnaturally loud. My parents were asleep upstairs, and I felt completely alone in the stillness. I grabbed the remote to turn off the TV and head to bed. But then I noticed something outside. Through the living room window, I saw a man standing at the very end of our driveway. He didn't move, didn't gesture, and didn't even seem to breathe. The street lamp cast a dim light, and his shadow stretched long across the pavement. He wore a hoodie pulled tightly over his head, and though I couldn't see his face clearly, I knew he was looking at the house. My stomach twisted, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. Was he really watching me, or was it just in my imagination? I pressed closer to the glass, my forehead almost touching it, trying to see him better. His outline was unnaturally still, and the quiet of the night seemed to amplify his presence. Every creak of the wooden porch under my feet sounded deafening, like it could give me away. The wind rustled the leaves, and I thought I heard faint footsteps behind me, though I had been alone the whole time. I wanted to call for my dad, but my voice caught in my throat. My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid he could hear it from where he slept. I debated moving away from the window, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the figure. He just stood there, his form partially hidden in the darkness, as if he had all the time in the world. Why was he there? And what would he do if I stepped away from the glass? Seconds stretched into minutes. I watched as he finally shifted slightly, a small tilt of his head, like he was acknowledging my presence. My hands shook as I pressed them against the cold glass. I could feel the chill creeping into my bones, making it impossible to move. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was frozen. A faint rustle of the bushes made me jump. The wind carried a scent I couldn't identify, damp, metallic, and faintly sour. I tried to make myself invisible, hoping he wouldn't notice me. Every second that passed felt heavier than the last, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. Was he planning to leave? Was he waiting for me to make a mistake? I could see his shoes now, muddy and worn. The prints leading to our driveway suggested he had walked some distance in the dark before stopping. I wondered how long he had been there before I noticed. My mind raced, imagining all the possibilities, none of them good. Every time a car passed down the street, I held my breath, hoping it might scare him away. The figure finally took a slow step forward. Not toward the house, but just closer into the light. My heart felt like it would burst from my chest. The night air felt heavier, almost suffocating, as if it knew something terrible was about to happen. I couldn't look away. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he stopped, stood there, staring, and then, without warning, he turned and walked back toward the street, disappearing into the darkness. But I knew this wasn't over. The prints he left behind haunted me, leading back to the edge of the driveway and then vanishing into nothing. Would he come back tonight, or was he already planning his next move? Finally, I grabbed the phone and dialed 911 while I was whispering to the operator. The man suddenly turned his head toward the window, like he knew I was watching. He started walking faster, not toward the house, but back down the driveway. He didn't run, he didn't hide. He just walked away into the night. When the police came, they searched but didn't find him. The next morning, we found muddy boot prints leading halfway up the driveway. Then, circling back, we never saw him again. But every time I looked out that window after, I always wondered if he'd come back. Perfect. Let's take your provided chapter and *** expanded into 15 suspenseful, more nightmare-style paragraphs, **, following all your rules, short sentences. First-person perspective, sensory details, suspenseful questions every 2 to 3 paragraphs, and a chilling mini cliffhanger ending. Finally, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely press the numbers. Every second felt endless, like time itself had slowed down. I whispered to the operator, trying not to make a sound, explaining that someone was outside my house. The man suddenly turned his head toward the window. He moved in a way that made my stomach drop. It was almost like he knew I was watching him. The car was pounding so loudly, I was afraid he could hear it. Was he really aware of me? Or was I imagining his movements? He started walking faster, but not toward the house. He didn't rush. He didn't sprint. He simply moved back down the driveway, deliberately, as if he was marking territory. Cool. The shadows stretched unnaturally around him, and I felt trapped behind the glass, unable to move. The wind rattled the blinds and whispered through the trees. A branch tapped against the window, but I didn't dare move to close it. My mind screamed at me to hide, but I was frozen, unable to leave the window. What would he do if I turned away for even a second? I pressed myself closer to the glass, barely breathing. Every detail of him was etched in my memory. The hoodie pulled tight, the broad shoulders, the slow, deliberate steps. I felt every muscle in my body tighten, ready to run. But I couldn't. When he finally disappeared into the night, I let out a quiet sigh of relief. But relief didn't last long. My body was tense, my pulse racing, every creak of the house making me jump. I knew he hadn't gone far. Why did he come here? What did he want from me? Minutes later, the police arrived. They moved cautiously, flashlights cutting through the dark, sweeping every corner of the yard. I followed silently, gripping the edge of the doorframe. But when they searched, they found nothing. No one, no trace. The next morning, the sunlight made everything seem normal again. But on the driveway, there were muddy boot prints. They led halfway up, then curved, circling back toward the street. Whoever it was had been here, close enough to touch the house. Could someone just vanish like that? Or was he still watching, waiting for the right moment? I couldn't stop thinking about him. Every time I looked out that window afterward, I felt that same cold dread. The driveway seemed darker, longer, and emptier than it really was. Even on sunny days, the memory of him lingered. Sometimes I thought I saw shadows move just outside the corner of my eye. I told myself it was the wind or a tree branch, but the fear never fully left. Was it possible he would return tonight? Or was he already planning his next move, somewhere just out of sight? Even now, years later, I still wonder. The image of him standing there, watching, never truly goes away. The driveway feels different, like it holds a secret I might never fully understand. Who was he? More importantly, would I ever feel safe in my own home again? Story 2. By knock at the sliding door, a woman named Claire wrote to me about an experience from her small suburban home. She lived alone in a house with a big sliding glass door that opened onto her backyard. One night, around 2 a.m., she woke up to the sound of a faint knock. At first, she thought it was at her front door, but as she listened closer, she realized it was coming from the sliding glass door in her kitchen. A woman named Claire wrote to me about an experience from her small suburban home. She lived alone in a house with a big sliding glass door that opened onto her backyard. Normally, it was just part of the scenery, something she barely noticed. But that night, it became the center of fear. It was around 2 a.m. when she woke up to a faint sound. At first, she thought it was her front door. Maybe a branch hitting the porch, or a car passing too close. But as she listened, she realized it was different. It was slow, intentional. A knock at the sliding glass door. The sound was soft, almost polite. In the dead of night, it was impossible to ignore. The house was silent otherwise. Every creak of the floor, every hum of the fridge was magnified in the stillness. Could it really be someone outside? Or was it just her imagination playing tricks? Claire sat up in bed, heart hammering. The shadows in the room seemed longer than usual. The moonlight spilling through the blinds looked almost unnatural. She could hear her own breathing, loud and shallow, and a soft tick of the clock on the wall. Her cat stirred at the foot of the bed, hissing at something unseen. Claire's hand trembled as she reached for her phone, clutching it like a lifeline. She debated calling 911 immediately, but fear and disbelief kept her frozen. Was it possible that someone had really come to her backyard? Or had she been dreaming the sound? The knocking came again. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate. She crept closer to the door, trying to peek through the curtain without revealing herself. A shadow moved faintly behind the glass. A figure, tall, still, watching. Claire's pulse raced. Her stomach churned. She could feel every hair on her body stand on end. Instinct screamed at her to run. But her feet were stuck, rooted to the floor by fear. What would happen if she screamed? Or if she moved too quickly? Would it provoke him? The figure shifted slightly. One hand pressed lightly against the glass. The other remained hidden in the shadows. Claire could just make out the shape of the hood pulled tightly over his head. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. The knocking stopped. Silence. Only the wind moving through the trees, whispering against the house. She held her breath, waiting, unsure whether it had gone or was just pausing. Could someone just vanish like that? Or was it lying in wait, biding its time? Claire backed away slowly, heading toward the bedroom. Every creak of the floor sounded like an alarm. The blinds rattled in the breeze. Her mind raced with questions she didn't want answers to. She locked the bedroom door and called 911, whispering to the operator, barely making a sound. When the police arrived, no one was there. No footprints, no shadows, nothing. The only evidence of the encounter was the smudged, greasy handprint on the glass. Far taller than Claire, pressed there and left behind. Whoever it was had been watching her long before she even realized it. Would it come back tonight? Or had it been gone all along, just waiting for the perfect moment to appear again? Claire crept out of her bedroom, phone in hand, and peeked around the corner. That's when she saw it. A tall shadow, barely visible through the curtain, standing right up against the glass. The knocking came again. Slow, deliberate taps. She froze in place, too terrified to move. Then the shadow spoke. A man's voice muffled through the door. "Let me in. I just need to use your phone." Claire's blood went cold. She didn't respond. Claire crept out of her bedroom, phone in hand, her heart hammering in her chest. Every step she took across the cold floor made her flinch. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She reached the corner and peeked around it. That's when she saw it. A tall shadow, just barely visible through the curtain, pressed against the glass of the sliding door. Her stomach dropped. The figure didn't move, but it was watching. The knocking came again. Slow, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. The sound echoed through the empty house, bouncing off walls and raising goosebumps on her arms. Was he really waiting for her? Or was it just a trick of the shadows? Claire froze. She could feel her pulse in her throat. The floor beneath her seemed to vanish, replaced by an icy fear that rooted her in place. Every instinct screamed to run, but her legs refused to move. Then the shadow spoke. A low, gravelly voice, muffled by the glass. "Let me in. I just need to use your phone." Her blood ran cold. The words were calm, almost casual, but there was a dangerous weight behind them. Her grip tightened on her phone, nails digging into her palm. Could he really be that close? Was he just asking for help or lying? The knocking started again, this time faster. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was impatient, almost threatening. Claire's eyes scanned the glass, but the shadows hid the man's face. She could see only the outline of his tall frame. The wind rattled the blinds, and a branch tapped against the outside of the door. Claire jumped. Every small sound seemed magnified in the still night. Her breath came in shallow, trembling gasps. What if he tried to break in? Would she even have time to react? She crouched lower, trying to make herself invisible. The room felt suffocating, the air thick and cold. Her cat hissed and darted under the bed, as if it sensed the danger too. The knocking stopped again, leaving only silence, and the feeling of being watched. Then, faintly, she heard another sound. Footsteps, or just her imagination. They were slow, deliberate, moving just outside the glass. Every creak of the porch made her flinch. The man's voice came again, lower this time. "I could see you. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Claire's heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst. She backed away toward the bedroom, slipping on the cold floor. Every instinct screamed for her to run and lock the door. When she reached the bedroom, she slammed the door shut and locked it. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she dialed 911, whispering into the phone. The operator's calm voice barely registered. The shadow was gone when the police arrived. No footprints, no forced entry, nothing. Just a faint, smudged outline of handprints on the glass, far taller than Claire. Whoever it was had been watching her long before she ever noticed. Would he come back tonight? Or had he never really left? The man grew impatient, his voice low and angry now. I know you're in there. I can see you. Claire dropped to the floor and crawled back to her bedroom, calling 911. The police arrived quickly, but when they checked the backyard, the man was gone. The only thing they found were greasy handprints smeared across the glass. The scariest part, those handprints were at least a foot higher than Claire's head. Whoever he was tall, and he had been watching her long before he knocked. The man grew impatient, his voice low and angry now. I know you're in there. I can see you. Claire dropped to the floor and crawled back to her bedroom, calling 911. The police arrived quickly, but when they checked the backyard, the man was gone. The only thing they found were greasy handprints smeared across the glass. The scariest part? Those handprints were at least a foot higher than Claire's head. Whoever he was tall, and he had been watching her long before he knocked. The man grew impatient. His voice was low, rough, and angry now. I know you're in there. I can see you. My heart nearly stopped. I pressed myself against the floor, crawling backward toward my bedroom. Every second felt like hours. My hands scraped against the hardwood, leaving faint marks. I tried to make as little noise as possible. Could he really see me through the glass? Or was he just bluffing to scare me? I reached the safety of my bedroom door and slammed it shut. The lock clicked into place, but it offered little comfort. The house suddenly felt smaller, tighter, heavier. Every shadow seemed to move. Every whisper of the wind sounded like footsteps. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911. My hands shook so badly that I nearly dropped it. I whispered to the operator, telling them about the man outside. Each word made my throat ache. What if he tried to get in before help arrived? I pressed my back against the door, listening. The silence was almost unbearable. Then, faintly, I heard it. A slow, dragging sound from the backyard. My stomach twisted. Was he circling the house, or just standing there, waiting? I imagined the window, the sliding glass door that had been his focus all along. My chest tightened at the thought of his eyes pressed to the glass. The knocking had stopped, but that made it worse. Silence in the night felt alive. Every creak of the house made me jump. I thought I'd heard a whisper, or maybe it was my own imagination. Could someone just vanish like that? Or was he still there, watching from the shadows? Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe 30. Time had lost all meaning. Then, flashing lights appeared outside. The police, relief, washed over me, but only briefly. They checked the backyard, sweeping their flashlights over every corner. But he was gone. No one, no footprints in the grass. No signs of forced entry. Nothing. My mind struggled to process it, except for the glass. The greasy handprints smeared across the sliding door. They were far taller than I was. Whoever it was, he had been standing there, watching me long before I even noticed him. The fear didn't end there. Every time I glanced at that door afterward, I felt eyes on me. The prints had been cleaned, but the memory lingered. It's a sense that someone had been closer than I ever realized. Would he come back tonight? Or had he never really left at all? Even now, years later, I can still feel the tension in the air of that night. The way the shadows seemed heavier, the way every creak of the floor sounded like a warning, and I still wonder, who really stood there, watching me through the glass? Story 3. by empty house next door when I was 12. A house on our street had been empty for years. The family who lived there moved out suddenly, and nobody bought it. The windows were always dark, the yard overgrown. But one night, I noticed a light flickering inside. At first, I thought maybe someone had finally moved in, but the light didn't look normal. It was faint, almost like candlelight. When I was 12, a house on our street had been empty for years. The family who lived there moved out suddenly, and nobody bought it. The windows were always dark, and the yard was overgrown. The grass grew tall, weeds twisted through the walkway, and the fence sagged in the middle. It looked abandoned, even haunted, though nobody dared say it aloud. Kids would dare each other to get close, but most of us avoided it after sunset. I always thought it was just an empty house. Until that night, one evening, I noticed a faint flicker of light inside one of the windows. My first thought was that someone had moved in quietly, but the light wasn't steady. It flickered like a candle, soft and warm, yet unsettling against the dark house. Could someone really be living there? Or was it something else entirely? Curiosity and fear battled inside me. I crept closer to the sidewalk in front of the house, careful not to make a sound. The street was empty, silent, except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. The air felt colder than usual, as if the house itself was drawing the warmth away. As I watched, the flicker moved from one window to another. It wasn't random. It felt deliberate, like someone or something was trying to show me it was there. Shadows danced across the walls, long and thin, stretching like fingers toward me. Why would someone choose to stay in an abandoned house like this? Or was it just my imagination playing tricks? I stepped closer, and the crunch of gravel under my shoes made me freeze. My pulse jumped. The light flickered again, brighter this time, illuminating a shape near the window. It looked like a tall figure, motionless, watching war, waiting. Every instinct told me to run, but I couldn't look away. The air grew heavy, almost suffocating. The smell of damp earth mixed with something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might give me away. Was that figure real? Or was it just a trick of the flickering candlelight? I edged closer, my hands shaking, pressing my face against the glass to see inside. The figure didn't move, but I could feel its gaze on me. Even from that distance, it felt alive, intentional, and very much aware of me. A branch scraped against a window pane, making a sharp noise that echoed in the night. My stomach sank. Whoever it was, it hadn't moved, but it had noticed me. I wanted to yell for someone, my parents or a neighbor, but my voice stuck in my throat. Every creak of the old house made me flinch. I could see faint movements behind the figure, almost like shadows dancing across the walls. Could anyone survive a night in there? Or was I witnessing something I wasn't meant to see? I backed away slowly, heart racing, my eyes never leaving the flickering light. Then, without warning, it vanished. The windows went dark, leaving the house looking abandoned again, silent and still. But even after I ran home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been waiting in that house, and that it was still there, just out of sight. Would I ever know what I saw that night? Had I glimpsed something I could never forget? I told my friend about it the next day, and we both went over to look through one of the front windows. That's when we saw a figure standing in the living room. A very tall, thin man, completely still, facing the wall. We ran back home, terrified, But the next evening, I couldn't resist checking again. The light was back. This time, I swear I saw the figure turn its head slightly toward the window. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. My mind replayed it over and over. I told my friend about it, trying not to sound crazy. We decided we had to see it for ourselves. That evening, we approached the house slowly. The street was quiet. Leaves rustled in the wind. Every step on the cracked sidewalk felt loud, like the house itself was listening. Could someone really be living there, or was it something else entirely? We reached the front window and peeked inside. That's when we saw him. A figure, tall and thin, standing in the middle of the living room, completely still, facing the wall. No movement at all, except the faint sway of the shadows around him. The sight froze us in place. I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The air felt thick and heavy. Even the distant hum of the streetlights seemed muted. Was it really a man? Something I couldn't explain. We didn't wait. We ran back home as fast as we could. The sound of our shoes hitting the pavement echoed in the silent night. My friend gasped for air, and I could barely speak. We both knew we'd seen something we weren't supposed to. The next evening, curiosity got the better of me. I told myself I had to check again. I had to know. I approached the house slowly, heart in my throat. The yard was overgrown, the fence sagging. The street was silent, the wind picking up, rattling branches against the windows. I could feel the cold air prickle my skin. Was I insane for coming back? Or had I left because I knew it was dangerous? I peeked through the front window. The light was on, the same dim glow from the living room. My stomach sank. The figure was there, but this time it moved, just slightly. Its head turned, almost imperceptibly, toward the window where I stood. I froze, my breath caught in my chest. Every hair on my arms stood on end. The room seemed darker, heavier, as if the shadows themselves were pressing in. Could it see me? Was it aware of me, standing there? I stepped back slowly, my heart racing. The figure remained perfectly still after turning its head. I could feel the weight of its gaze, cold and deliberate, though I wasn't even inside the house. Every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't stop watching. I wanted to understand. I wanted to see if it would move again. Suddenly, a branch scraped the window. I jumped back with a gasp. The figure didn't flinch. The light flickered. Shadows stretched long across the walls. Was it waiting for me? Or had it always been there, unseen until that moment? I ran home that night, faster than I ever had. Even as I slammed the door shut behind me, I could still see the dim light flickering in my mind. The image of that tall, thin man, completely still, haunts me even now. Would I ever be able to forget it? Or was it only a matter of time before it returned? My parents called the police, thinking maybe squatters had broken in. But when officers checked, the house was completely empty. No lights, no candles, no one inside. Yet, for weeks after that, I'd wake up at night and see that same faint glow coming from the empty house next door. The figure inside never seemed to move. It was always just waiting. My parents called the police immediately. They thought maybe squatters had broken in, or some kids were playing a prank. I tried to explain what I had seen, but even I didn't fully understand it. It felt too unreal, like something out of a dream. The officers arrived quickly, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. I followed them cautiously, heart pounding. Every step I took across the cracked sidewalk sounded impossibly loud. The wind rustled leaves in the overgrown yard. Would they even see what I had seen? Or was I imagining it all? They checked the house from top to bottom. Every room, every corner, every closet, but it was completely empty. No lights, no candles, no furniture moved. Nothing. The house was abandoned in the cold light of the flashlights. I watched from the driveway, unable to tear my eyes from the front window. Even knowing the house was empty, I felt eyes on me. That faint glow I had seen before, soft, flickering, still lingered in my mind. How could there be a light if no one was inside? The officers left after a while, shaking their heads, saying there was nothing to find. I went inside with my parents, trying to convince myself it was over. But sleep didn't come easily. My mind replayed the glow over and over. Weeks passed, but every night I woke up to the same thing, a faint glow in the empty house next door. I would lie in bed, staring out the window, and see it flicker, always in the same spot, on the second floor, near the front window. Was it the reflection of a street lamp? Or was someone or something inside that house? Sometimes I thought I saw a figure standing behind the glass. It never moved, never flinched, never disappeared, just waiting. The way it looked, I couldn't tell if it was human or something else. My parents didn't believe me anymore. They said it was probably shadows or my imagination, but the glow never went away. It called to me in a way I couldn't explain. Even during the day, the house felt different. Its shadows seemed heavier, darker than the sun should allow. The yard looked dead, but the air around it felt alive. I could hear faint creaks and whispers when I passed by. Was it waiting for something? Or was it just content to watch me night after night? I started avoiding looking at it, but my eyes always found the glow anyway. I would catch a flicker from the corner of my eye, and my stomach would drop. The figure never moved, yet it seemed to know I was watching. Sometimes I thought I saw shapes behind the window, shapes that didn't belong. Dark shapes, shifting just slightly, impossible to focus on. Every instinct screamed at me to stay away, but I couldn't. Even now, years later, I can't forget that glow. The empty house still haunts me. The figure never left. It's always been there, waiting, patient and silent. Would I ever see it move? Or would it wait forever, just watching me from behind that glass? Story 4 by Stranger in the Basement. A college student named David shared this story. He was home from school, staying at his parents' suburban house. A few nights in, he started hearing noises from the basement late at night. At first, he thought it was pipes or the furnace, but one night around 3 a.m., he heard something that made his stomach drop. The sound of footsteps, slow and heavy, moving across the basement floor. I had just finished my first week back home from college. The house felt empty without my parents around all the time. The quiet was comforting during the day, but at night it became something else entirely. A few nights in, I started hearing noises from the basement. At first, I assumed it was just the usual creaks of an old house, pipes, the furnace, maybe a raccoon outside. But one night around 3 a.m., it sounded different, slow, heavy. Footsteps across the basement floor. My stomach dropped the moment I realized it wasn't the house settling. Could someone actually be down there? Or was it just my imagination? I stayed in my bed, listening, every muscle tense. The footsteps stopped for a moment, then started again, closer this time. They moved deliberately, like someone was pacing. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, maybe a dream. Maybe I was overreacting, but the sound of the footsteps was too real, too heavy to ignore. What would I do if someone really was down there? I got out of bed, heart pounding, and crept toward the basement door. The wooden stairs creaked under my weight, each one a warning in the silent house. My hand trembled as I reached for the light switch. The basement was dark. Only the faint glow from the streetlight outside filtered in through the small window. Shadows stretched across the walls like long fingers. Was it really empty, or was someone hiding in the shadows, watching me? I took a slow step down. Cold air brushed against my face, carrying a faint, musty smell. The footsteps had stopped. Absolute silence. My own breathing sounded unnaturally loud. Then I heard it again. A single, deliberate step across the concrete floor. Sighing, trying to steady my racing heart. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but curiosity, horrible curiosity, kept me rooted in place. Turned slowly, scanning the shadows. Nothing moved. Nothing visible. But I could feel eyes on me, heavy and deliberate. The sense of being watched pressed down on me. Was he really there? Or was I hearing things that weren't real? I slowly climbed the stairs back to the main floor, trying to stay calm. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the flashlight I had grabbed. Even with the light on, the shadows in the corners of the basement seemed to move, stretch, and twist. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak, every whisper of wind against the windows felt like it came from the basement. Deep down, I knew the footsteps hadn't been a dream. Would he come back tonight? Or had I narrowly escaped whatever was down there? David grabbed a flashlight and quietly opened the basement door. He listened, holding his breath. For a moment, silence. Then a dragging sound, like something being pulled. He shined the light down the stairs, but nothing was there. Gathering his courage, he walked down. The basement was empty, but when he checked a small storage room at the far end, found something chilling. A blanket, some food wrappers, and a half-empty water bottle. Someone had been living down there. The next night, I couldn't stop thinking about the basement. Every creak in the house made me jump. My bedroom door felt too thin, my walls too paper-like. I told myself it was just nerves, but around 2 a.m. I heard it again. A slow, scraping sound from the basement door. Soft at first, then louder, deliberate. Someone or something was trying to get out. Could it be the same thing I heard last night? Or was this something new? I grabbed a flashlight, creeping down the hallway. My footsteps echoed too loudly, and I flinched at every small noise. The house felt alive in the darkness, watching. The basement door was closed. The scraping had stopped, but the air around it felt cold, unnaturally cold, like it was breathing. I could hear the faint hum of silence, stretched tight, waiting. Was someone hiding behind that door, or had I imagined the sound? I reached for the doorknob. My fingers trembled. The metal was ice cold under my touch. A shiver ran down my spine, and I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. Then it moved. Slowly, a faint push from the other side. The door shuddered. Flashlight shaking in my hand. My mind raced. Who or what was in there? I slowly edged closer again. Every step seemed louder than the last. The shadows of the hallway stretched long and thin, reaching for me. My breath caught. The doorknob wobbled slightly, as if someone was testing it. Was it trying to get out, or was it testing me? I forced my courage and pushed the door open an inch. Darkness poured out from the basement like liquid. The smell hit me first damp, musty, and something else I couldn't name. My stomach turned. A low, scraping noise came from the corner. My flashlight revealed a shadow, shifting slowly, almost lazily. My pulse raced. Whoever or whatever it was had been waiting for me to open the door. Could it see me? Could it hear me breathing? I didn't want to go down the stairs, but I couldn't leave either. The house felt wrong if I didn't face it. I took a deep breath, stepping toward the first step. The floorboard groaned beneath my weight. Then, from deep in the shadows, I heard a whisper. My name, soft, deliberate. I see you. I froze. Every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't. The basement had become a place I couldn't escape. Was it speaking to me? Or was my mind breaking under the tension? David ran upstairs to wake his parents and call the police, but by the time officers arrived, the intruder was gone. The strangest part was that none of the doors or windows had been forced open. Whoever it was, they had a key. And to this day, David's family has no idea how long someone had been secretly living under their house. The basement felt different that night. Darker, heavier, like the air itself was alive. My flashlight barely cut through the black, leaving most of the room hidden in shadows. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a raccoon, maybe my imagination, but the whispering name I heard before still echoed in my mind. Could it really be waiting for me down there, or was I just paranoid? I stepped onto the first stair. Cold concrete sent a shiver up my spine. The scraping noise from the previous night had returned, slow and deliberate, coming from the far corner of the basement. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. Every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't. I needed to see. Was it really just a shadow, or something more? I edged closer, flashlight shaking in my hand. Dust floated in the weak beam, swirling like tiny ghosts. The air smelled damp, like mold, but underneath it was something metallic, like iron. Then I saw it, a face, pale, thin, half hidden in shadow. Eyes that glinted like black mirrors, staring right at me. My stomach turned cold. Was it real, or was it a trick of the light? I froze. The figure didn't move at first, just stood there, watching, patient, waiting. My breathing was shallow. I could hear my pulse in my ears. Every creak in the house sounded magnified. Then it tilted its head, a slow, deliberate movement, and it smiled. Wide, unnatural smile that didn't reach the eyes. Could something human even move like that? I stumbled back, almost losing my flashlight. The face seemed closer now, though I hadn't moved an inch. Shadows shifted around it, stretching across the walls, coiling like dark smoke. The whisper came again. My name, softer this time, almost a hiss. I've been waiting for you. I bolted for the stairs. My shoes slipped on the concrete. Every step felt like it echoed through the basement like a drumbeat, announcing my fear. When I reached the top, I slammed the door shut. My hands shook so badly I couldn't turn the lock. The house was silent again, but I knew it wasn't gone. Would it return tonight? Or had it only been waiting for the perfect moment to appear again? Even now, years later, I can still see the face in the shadows. Its eyes never blink, and its smile never fades. And sometimes, when the house is quiet, I swear I hear my name whispered from below. Story 5 by Last Bus Stop. I'll end with a story from a man named Josh. He lived in a quiet suburb where the bus stop was about a 10-minute walk from his house. One night, after working late, he got off at the stop around midnight and started walking home. The streets were empty, lined with neat little houses and trimmed lawns. But after a few minutes, he noticed footsteps behind him. He'd just gotten off the bus around midnight. The streets were empty, silent, lined with neat little houses and manicured lawns. Everything looked normal, but the quiet felt heavy, almost too still. The air was cold, crisp, and carried the faint smell of wet asphalt from a light drizzle earlier. I pulled my jacket tighter around me and started walking, my footsteps echoing on the pavement. At first, it was just the sound of my own feet, or so I thought. A few minutes in, I noticed something else. Footsteps, slow, matching my pace, behind me. I stopped, heart pounding, and listened. Silence. Then again, soft, deliberate. Was someone really following me? Or was it just my imagination playing tricks in the dark? I glanced over my shoulder. The street was empty. Houses were dark, curtains drawn. No one. Nothing. Just me. Yet the footsteps continued, keeping pace with my own. My heartbeat quickened. Streetlights cast long shadows, twisting across the sidewalks. I tried to convince myself it was a stray animal. Maybe a raccoon or a cat. Could a raccoon really make that sound? Heavy, deliberate, like someone walking with purpose. I sped up. The echo of my steps seemed louder now. Every shadow along the street looked like it could be hiding someone, waiting for me to get close. The footsteps behind me did the same. They didn't speed up, didn't slow down. They mirrored me perfectly. I tried turning suddenly, half expecting to see someone there, but the street remained empty. No one in the dark. Just shadows dancing under the weak streetlights. Was it real, or was my mind starting to break under the tension? I took another step, and a cold breeze hit the back of my neck. Goosebumps ran down my arms. The silence of the neighborhood felt alive, almost watching me. I forced myself to keep walking, trying to stay calm. But my pulse was relentless. Every sound whined through the trees. A distant calm made me flinch. Then I felt it. Closer, the footsteps, sharper, more pronounced. Whoever or whatever it was had moved nearer. I didn't look back. My stomach churned, my mind racing. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs felt like lead. Would I make it home safely? Or had I already walked into something I couldn't escape? At first, he thought it was just another commuter, but when he looked back, he saw a man standing under a streetlight. The man wasn't walking. He was just standing, staring at him. Josh kept walking faster. For a while, he heard the footsteps again. He turned around, and the man was closer now, but still completely silent. I forced myself to keep walking, every step feeling heavier than the last. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting uneven pools of light on the sidewalk. Shadows stretched along, twisting like fingers in the night. The footsteps behind me hadn't stopped. They matched my pace exactly. Not faster, not slower. Every echo of a step felt deliberate, like someone was testing me. Was someone really following me? Or had my mind started playing cruel tricks? I risked a glance over my shoulder. Nothing. Just empty streets and dark windows. But my gut told me otherwise. Someone or something was there, watching, waiting. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. My breathing came fast and shallow, each exhale visible in the cold night air. I gripped my bag tighter, feeling the strap dig into my shoulder. Could it see me? Could it hear my heartbeat? A shadow detached itself from the nearest streetlight, moved with a slow, unnatural glide, perfectly mirroring my path. My stomach dropped. The shadow was humanoid, but wrong. It's too tall, too thin. I tried to pick up my pace, but my legs felt frozen, like the concrete beneath me had glued itself to my shoes. The shadow did the same. Was it just my eyes playing tricks, or was it real? The streets seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. Each house looked the same, each yard overgrown, quiet, watching. I felt trapped in some cruel loop, my own street, unfamiliar and threatening. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. Every breath, every step made me feel exposed. The shadow kept its distance, but never fell behind, never disappeared. What did it want? Why was it following me? I risked another glance. The figure's face remained obscured, hidden in darkness, but its presence was undeniable. The cold radiating from it sent shivers down my spine. I ran, fast as I could. My shoes slapped the wet pavement, echoing into the empty streets. Behind me, the shadow kept pace, gliding effortlessly. Would it catch me if I tripped? If I slowed, even for a second? I turned a corner near my house, hoping to lose it in the familiar blocks. But when I looked back, the shadow had stopped at the street corner, watching, patient, waiting, even behind locked doors later that night. I could feel it lingering in my mind. The street was empty, but the memory of its presence refused to leave. Would it return tomorrow night, or had it been waiting for me all along? Josh broke into a run, sprinting all the way to his house. He slammed the door shut and peeked through the blinds. The street looked empty, but just as he was about to turn away, he saw movement. The man was standing in his driveway, staring straight at the house. Then, without a word, he slowly walked back down the street and disappeared into the darkness. Josh never took the bus home that late again. I remembered that night like it was yesterday. I had missed the last earlier bus, leaving me stranded under the dim glow of the streetlights. The streets were empty, quiet, and every shadow seemed to twist unnaturally. I stepped off the bus and started walking home, the sound of my footsteps echoing against the silent houses. My backpack felt heavy on my shoulders, but I barely noticed. My attention was on the street ahead. Was I imagining it, or did something feel off? That's when I saw him. A man, standing motionless at the end of the street, barely illuminated by the flickering street lamp. He wasn't moving, just watching. My heart sank. I froze, hoping it was a trick of the light. But the shape didn't vanish. It stayed there, silent, waiting. Who was he, eh? And why was he standing there, staring at me? I picked up my pace, trying to act calm, though my chest felt tight. Each step sounded impossibly loud. The asphalt seemed to amplify my fear. Every crack and pebble underfoot, a drumbeat of warning. Could he see me? Was he following me already? I broke into a run. A shoe slapped the wet pavement, my breath coming in harsh, visible puffs. Every street light I passed cast shadows that stretched toward me like fingers. The houses on either side looked normal, but they didn't comfort me. Windows reflected my terrified face back at me. The world felt distorted, unreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Was he really there, or had my mind tricked me into fear? When I finally reached my driveway, I slammed the door behind me and pressed my back against it. My hand shook as I peered through the blinds. My street was empty. No sound but the wind brushing leaves along the curb. And then I saw movement. He was there. The same man, standing in my driveway now, closer than before, staring straight at the house. The way he stood, perfectly still, made my stomach twist with dread. Would he come closer? Or would he vanish like a shadow when I blinked? Then, without a word, he slowly walked back down the street, each step deliberate, each step measured. And just like that, he disappeared into the darkness. I never took the bus home that late again. Even thinking about it now, years later, makes my pulse quicken. Would he still be out there tonight, waiting silently under a street lamp? Or was that night a one-time glimpse into something I was never meant to see? Those were 5 terrifying true horror stories from quiet suburbs. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.